Alright guys, so today we have even more PlayStation news and information to go over. Yesterday was a pretty big day for PlayStation. There was just a lot of new information going around, and I wasn't able to cover all of it yesterday, but there's definitely still some significant things here that I wanted to talk to you guys about and just go over here. And the first thing we're going to start with is some really good news, honestly, for God of War, with the announcement that it has officially sold 10 million copies. So it says, "We've known the latest God of War has been something of a powerhouse for Sony, but it was in part expected. The series has historically been a major seller for the platform holder. However, the PlayStation 4 outing has gone above and beyond. Before Marvel's Spider-Man came along, it held the record as the fastest-selling first-party title in the company's history, selling 5 million copies in the first month on the market. Now we know that figure has more than doubled. As part of a new presentation from Sony, it's been officially stated that God of War has sold over 10 million units, joining Uncharted 4: Thief's End and The Last of Us Remastered as one of PS4's best-selling exclusives. A few months ago, it was reported that Spider-Man had sold over 9 million copies, so we imagine it's also nearing the milestone if it hasn't crossed it already. Sony has highlighted the growth of its first-party studios and games in the same report, and it seems it'll be expanding its worldwide studios in the future, according to Jim Ryan. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes. But yeah, this is obviously really good news, and it's really nice to be able to celebrate the success of a game like God of War and other games similar to it, because Sony is out here, as I said before, proving companies like EA, Activision, and even to an extent Microsoft wrong, and showing them how it's done, and proving to them that, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have multiplayer games where you can have recurrent monetization. I mean, there is something wrong with it when they want to do it in a very unfair way, but it's understandable that these companies want to have revenue streams to be able to continue to make profit. That's what they're all about. But what they also need to understand is that games like God of War, single-player games, even looking back at Uncharted 4, looking at Spider-Man, The Last of Us, seeing the success of these games, and even recently with Days Gone, a new IP, hearing how well that's selling, I think these companies can really take a good hard look at Sony, see how well their games are selling, and they're definitely making money off it. Like, that's important to understand this. Sony is certainly making a good chunk of change on these single player games, and the reason why that's important is because a lot of these other companies, a lot of other people within the industry try to make it seem like, oh no, it's not profitable, you can't make money on single player games, that's just not how it works. But that's really not the case. You know what I mean? Like, this is proving right here, like 10 million units sold. What gaming company wouldn't be happy with that? I mean, a lot of these companies, unfortunately, they set their expectations way too high, to the point where even if they were to sell 10 million copies of a single player game, that's just not good enough for them, right? Like, they need more than that. They need all the money in the world, and that's just a sad thing, man. Like, it really shouldn't be like that. But God of War sells 10 million units. It's well deserved. Congratulations to that team at Santa Monica. We watched recently, I'm sure most of us watched the Raising Kratos documentary, which was awesome, just to see the journey that, the development teams there went through, the blood, sweat, and tears to end up creating such an awesome game, an awesome product. And you know what? Every sale is well deserved. So good job, Sony. I always am glad to hear, things like this, because it just proves that single player games are alive and well. And so moving on from that, we're going to be talking about the investment that apparently Sony is going to be pushing for going into next generation when it comes to first-party studios. So it says it's a tactic that Microsoft has found great success in during previous E3 conferences, but it looks like Sony is once again stepping up its act when it comes to first-party acquisition. At last night's investor meeting, Jim Ryan stated that PlayStation is planning on investing in its lineup of first-party studios through organic growth and acquisitions as the PlayStation 5 inches closer to release. Rather than purchasing active developers, Sony has traditionally opened studios in the past, growing its first-party library organically. This news indicates that this will continue while sprinkling in a couple of purchases along the way. The last major studio that Sony purchased was Sucker Punch way back in 2011, which had kicked off the successful Infamous franchise 2 years prior and is now working on the upcoming Ghost of Tsushima. First party is clearly a huge success for Sony, having just announced that God of War has passed 10 million in lifetime sales. Incredibly impressive stuff. So yeah, honestly, some more really good news. This is stuff that honestly I don't think anybody here really has a problem with hearing, knowing that Sony wants to come out here and they're letting us know that, look, going into next generation, going forward, they clearly understand the importance of first party. They clearly know just how successful first party can be for the brand of PlayStation, but they're showing that they want to actively continue to pursue that, actively continue to grow their studios, and I really like the idea of growing it organically. I think that's really important. There's nothing wrong with acquisitions, of course. They're great. But there's just something about the idea of growing it organically and doing it kind of from the ground up and cultivating it from the ground up that it just seems kind of special to me to do it that way. And to hear that Sony's going to do it, both, music to my ears, man. One of the most exciting things I've heard about Xbox in the past year was them acquiring new studios, clearly showing that they want to make more games, they want to diversify their games, and we have yet to see those games, of course, and it will be a while till we see all of them, but it's a huge first step, and Sony already has a lot of great games, and they have a lot of great studios, and hear that they just want to bolster that even more. I'm all for that, man. Like, I really want to see this happen. Especially with Sony, because Sony has a certain standard, and so it would be interesting to think about what type of studios they would be willing to acquire. You have to think at this point they're probably pretty particular in the type of studio that they would want to acquire. We know for sure that if they were to do something organically from the ground up and create a new studio, we know that it's going to be something that they expect big things from. I could imagine it being a AAA studio. In fact, there was a rumor that was going around a while ago. I didn't really cover it because I was a little late to the party on it, but that they are actually in the process of creating another AAA studio that they're currently building, and they're going to probably be announcing within the next year or two. So that's one thing. Maybe that's exactly what they're talking about here. So, yeah, good news all around. But we have even more to unpack here, and this one, I'm a little late to it, but I still think it's worth talking about, and that is that Sony Interactive launches a unit to adapt games for film. So PlayStation Productions, overseen by SIE chairman and Worldwide Studios Sean Layden, will develop and produce projects based on the company's catalog of more than 100 games. Sony Interactive Entertainment has launched PlayStation Productions, a production studio that will mine the company's extensive catalog of video game titles for film and television. The new enterprise will be overseen by chairman of Worldwide Studios. Sean Layden is already in production on its first slate of projects and has set up shop on the Sony Pictures lot in Culver City. We've got 25 years of game development experience, and that's created 25 years of great games, franchises, and stories, Layden tells The Hollywood Reporter. We feel that now is a good time to look at other media opportunities across streaming or film or television to give our worlds life in another spectrum. So, yeah, basically what this means is that PlayStation now has a new division that's going to be focused on creating, as it says here, movies and TV shows based off of their franchises. And it's true, Sony does have a huge list of franchises, worlds, characters to pull from. And this is an announcement that will clearly not get everybody excited, because if you think about it, video games based, or movies, I should say, based off of video games have not really done that great. There's really not many at all that have actually done something that comes off as truly impressive, or I guess we could say has done justice. I'm sure there's a few that some of you can think of that I'm currently not thinking of off the top of my head. But you guys understand what I'm saying. It just hasn't really worked out that well. Video games don't really translate most times, or in most cases, to a good movie or a good TV show. But we're seeing it happen more and more, and I think that we're getting closer. And I don't know, I'm actually excited to see what they're going to do. I think the latest rumor is that apparently the first thing that Sony's going to be pursuing with this is a Twisted Metal TV series. Now that would be interesting. I have no idea what that would be like, but I guess that's kind of what makes it interesting, right? And people would like to see like an Uncharted movie potentially, because we know that there's a lot of these interactive narrative single player experiences. A lot of them are pretty much up there with like what you would expect from like a Hollywood movie. So it's like it's almost right there. Like all you got to do is just pretty much copy this and just remove the gameplay segments with action scenes. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty much all they would have to do. But yeah, very interesting stuff here. A lot of information to unpack. Sorry if the video was a little bit all over the place, but there's just so much here. I'm trying to keep it all organized, but yeah, there we go. God of War sells 10 million copies basically within its first year. Very impressive, very good for that studio, very good for the franchise, obviously, well deserved. We're hearing that Jim Ryan, the current PlayStation CEO, is going to be investing further in first party with organic studio growth, creating new studios, as well as possibly acquiring them going into next generation. So that's very exciting news. And now PlayStation has a new division that's going to be focused on making movies and TV shows based off of their properties. So yeah, I will be interested to see what you guys have to say about all this. What news here excites you the most? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. If you enjoy the content, it really helps out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.